Whoa, I can't believe it. We are at the beginning of a new decade, 2020. So what's going to happen in 2020? Well, so I think I want to name this decade the decade for innovation. And so I started looking at like what does innovation actually mean, and ended up realizing that people can't agree. So I read over 100 definitions of innovation, and I've concluded that I like this one the best, which is creativity is thinking of something new. Innovation is the implementation of something new. And that comes from Paul Sloane, but I think that innovation equals an idea plus implementation plus change. And the reason I'm going to describe it that way is because a lot of people have ideas. Doesn't mean that it's an innovation. Sometimes we take those ideas and implement them. And even at that point, it may not be an innovation. We may have learned something. The innovation happens when it gets implemented and it changes people's behaviors or the way they think. Innovation is really about making lasting change through the spark of an idea of understanding that you could do something different. So I came up with 5 predictions for the decade of 2020. Prediction number 1. Prediction number 1 is that YouTube or other online platforms will reduce our need to be at large conferences. Frankly, like, who wants to be in a crowded space, not knowing where to go? You have to be there at certain times. Like, that's not what we want anymore. And online platforms allow us to still learn some of the things that are out there, but we could do it in our own environment, just like you're watching this YouTube video. Let me give you an example. I think TED Talks have completely just blown up and gotten huge. The actual TED Talk, only about 1,000 people show up to a TED Talk live, but each TED Talk gets millions of views. Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talk on education is the most viewed TED Talk, and it has 63 million views. Let's take a TEDx. TEDx only has 100 people attend each TEDx. It's capped at 100 people. But TEDx Houston with Brene Brown, that video has 43 million views. The need to go to these massive conferences will greatly reduce, and over the next decade, we'll actually see smaller events, closer events where we could actually build real relationships with people, more of those kinds of things. They're already starting to form as mastermind groups. Prediction number 2. Prediction number 2 is we will be influenced more by individuals than by brands. And what I mean by that is it's already shifting in sports where people are following individual players as opposed to like their hometown team or a particular team. For example, like Kevin Durant. I still like Kevin Durant even though he left the Warriors. I'm not going to follow the team that he moved to, but I will follow Kevin. And I will follow him on Instagram and know a ton about him. And to prove my point further, let's take a look at George Koros. George has 266,000 Twitter followers. McGraw-Hill has 55,000, and Pearson has 13,000. And so it's already happening where people are starting to follow individuals and the brands that they represent. Prediction number 3. Prediction number 3 is that learning will happen in teams, and that's where the most learning will happen. And so teaching will also have to happen in teams. There are already people thinking about this kind of work. Arizona State's thinking about team teaching, but really there's just too much information out there for us not to be working in teams to be able to process and make better decisions and analyze. Prediction number 4 is innovative leaders will think about how they work versus what people need to work on. And that's already happening through leadership books around like servant leadership, how to like elevate teams, how to grow people. This is all about innovative leaders trying to change the behavior of the people that work around them so that they can work better together and move forward to achieve the goals that they want. But until they figure out how to work better together, they're not going to achieve all these goals. And so leadership models have changed from top-down hierarchical model And it's not really this flat model either where everyone has equal say. I really define the future of leadership as a world where we have multiple hierarchies within an organization where different people are still responsible, but they're responsible for smaller chunks of it. And if these systems work well together like a network, then it's kind of optimal speed in terms of decision making forward progress. Prediction number five is that there will be a shift, and it's already happening, a shift from just setting goals to figuring out what the habits are. And the reason I think that is because there are a ton of books already out there. New York Times bestseller, so millions of people are reading these books around how to shift from goals to habits. And the habits are the things that you do every day. It kind of sets your identity. And so I think that it'd be super interesting for somebody to start thinking about strategic planning in terms of habits. Like instead of just setting these 4, 5, 6 goals that you're going to have, really think about what are the habits that you're going to build in your strategic plan work, right? So in our strategic plan, I could say, well, here are the habits that I think as an organization we're going to build to achieve these goals. Those habits might be an innovation habit, a learning habit, or an inclusion habit. These are all the things that are going to help us get to the end result that we want. So the last thing I want to leave you with is this idea that we have to move from doing things that are lagging indicators to things that are leading indicators. And what that means is that the things that we try to put in place have to give us foresight into what might happen, the result that we want to get, instead of putting in place things based on purely what happened in the past. I think that if we want to move towards more innovation, we have to move towards actions that become leading indicators for us as opposed to lagging indicators. So with that, I'm excited to take this journey with you in 2020. And like I always say, don't compare your insights to other people's outsides. Peace.